Last time, we looked at the Batmobile. It was good. Lots of figures fit in it, but no Adam West Batman? But wait, now we have him. Don't move a muscle. The worst is yet to come. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting off the packaging, in this retro-style Batman comes in a retro-style blister card. We got the Batman Classic TV series logo up here. Batman himself is set against a bright blue swirl. We can see his onomatopoeia sound effects on the side and a skyline at the bottom. On the back we have a really great promotional image of the figure, which really looks just spot on. We also see some promotional images for the Batcave and the Batmobile, once again giving credit to George Barris, guessing that must be a legal thing. And speaking of legal things, all the legals on the bottom. I love the colors and the aesthetic, but it's also kind of blah. Just a lot of dead space. If the whole thing was narrower, say kind of like his 5-inch Avatar figures, I don't think it would have been so bad. I mean, it can't be that hard to put those inside the box. They could literally fit right here. I know I'm just nitpicking. So for packaging, I'm giving Batman 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, Batman stands at just under 6 inches. Starting off with the head, and if there's one thing I can't fault this figure for, it's the likeness. Just look at those eyes boring into your soul. That being said, the blue is just a little too light. It should really be closer to the color of this cape, which unfortunately is not removable and therefore not replaceable. This is unfortunate because the cape itself is honestly kind of crinkly and kind of wrinkly and just kind of Now on the other hand, it looks to be the exact same material that NECA used in their version, so I don't know. In NECA's defense, they gave you a lot more of it so it hanged a bit more naturally. Flipping that cape up, and here he is from the back. Moving on down, the Adam West style bat symbol is painted very crisply. The buckle itself is sculpted, but it should actually be painted, and there should also be capsules in between the pouches. As for the trunks, we'll get to that during posability. Moving on down the arm, we have all the wrinkles and folds of his gloves. We see similar detailing on the boots. His arms are kind of curved outward in this sort of bow-armed way. Is bow-armed a word? And pulling back, the proportions of his legs just seem a little bit off. Then again, looking at some promotional images of Batman, and that honestly might be accurate. The likeness to Adam West is spot on, and the sculpt is overall pretty decent, but small details like the colors and the capsules are definitely a bit off, and the cape is just plain terrible. For presentation, I'm giving Retro Batman 1/2 point. Moving on to posability, and Batman's head's on a ball joint. He doesn't have a barbell or a disc hinge, so there's no up and down. Slight amount of tilt, but all the way around. His shoulders are on a swivel hinge and raise over 90 degrees. Might want to have a doctor look at those armpits. He has single jointed elbows, and speaking of swivels, he has a swivel in his forearm, and also in the wrist. No ab crunch or diaphragm joint, but he does have a waist swivel, and for leg articulation, he has an old style T-jointed crotch. This allows him to kick out that far, and nothing else. Considering that even their 5-inch scale Avatar figures have ball-jointed hips, this just makes no sense. If it was just about preserving the sculpt of the trunks, they could have at least added a DC Universe Classic style hinge. Moving on down, the knees are single-jointed, and similar to the elbows, they also have a swivel. I don't necessarily have an issue with this because it does preserve the sculpt better, but then we get down to the ankles, and there is nothing there at all. Look, I get that they do make figures like this, and sometimes they even have realistic likenesses, but usually those figures are only about $10. Granted, that's more of a discussion for price, and believe me, we will have that discussion, but when we heard that McFarlane Toys was going to be making 6-inch figures based off of this version of Batman, this is not what any of us had in mind. He can do this so he can sit in the Batmobile, but beyond that, he may as well not even have lower articulation at all. Since he's only halfway articulated, for posability, I'm giving Batman 1/2 point. Moving on to playability, and Batman comes with a couple of clip-on onomatopoeias. Pow! Kapow! And it looks like his hand is sculpted to hold a gun, but it doesn't come with any accessories. Probably built in there for future reuse. But playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your figure plays with others. So here he is with some other blue and gray Batman figures. And here he is with the Adam West Batman by NECA Toys. Notice the correct blue, the very well integrated ankle pivots, and the fact that they were able to crack the code of ball jointed hips in spite of Batman's granny panties. And for the real archenemy of the Adam West Batman, here he is with a shark. It even squeaks. And for one more 6-inch comparison, here he is with Rebirth Batman from DC Icons. For a relative scale comparison, here he is with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And lastly, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Just for a bit of perspective, there's actually more articulation in this half of an action figure than there is in this entire Batman. But playability is more than just action figure comparisons, it's also about vehicles. And this Batman was made with one very special vehicle in mind: the Batmobile. Batmobile designed by George Barris. And after all this build-up, how does he look? He's okay. As expected, he's a little bit too big. In fact, his head peers over the entire windshield. And I think we all know that Adam West Batman cares far too much about road safety to drive something that isn't street legal.
All around us is that deadly daily danger: traffic.
It was designed this way on purpose, but let me just go ahead and say it's a stupid design! He's too big for the Batmobile, and he's too small for other figures. He's barely posable, so all he can do is just stand there looking out of place. Look, I know it's not like me to be this negative, but I gotta tell you, this figure really frustrates me. If you want to make a 6-inch Batman action figure, fine. In terms of playability and engineering, make it more like this. If you want to make a toy with limited articulation that's a bit more targeted toward kids, fine, do this. If you want to make a retro-style action figure that fits inside of a 1/18 scale Batmobile, do this. As is, it just kind of feels like this figure was made for nobody. In his defense, there are other figures in this line that he can interact with, so he does have that going for him. But for playability, I'm giving this Batman half a point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I picked up this Batman at Target for $17.99. $17.99! $17.99! This is what $17.99 buys you. For a comparison, just a couple of videos ago, I reviewed this Batman figure, which I also picked up at Target for only $19.99. This figure, with its butterfly joint and bicep swivel and double jointed elbows and diaphragm joint and functioning hips and double jointed knees and ankle articulation and giant axes. But hey, the Adam West one says POW! And you remember those Avatar figures I mentioned? Those retail for only $10. Granted, this is slightly taller and has a realistic likeness that probably costs a little bit extra in licensing fees, but at $18, it's entirely too much. For price, I'm giving the Retro Batman 0 points for a grand total of 2.5 out of 5. Considering how much I love the new Batmobile, this figure is just a real disappointment. To check out that video, click here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.